Chair, fellow author, and members of the House Education Committee, as I begin, I'd like to thank my policy fellow, Milena Wood, for assistance with this testimony. On behalf of Abortion Forward and our thousands of members and supporters around the state, we stand in firm opposition to this bill. Ohio students deserve better. Our schools should exist to provide students with an education that gives them the tools to be robust, critical thinkers. We often hear from members of this body about how it's not the job of our public schools to instill a political belief in children. It is the job of parents to guide their children on the path they deem most fit. It is interesting that this principle no longer applies when certain groups with perspectives that match the perspectives of the majority party want to push their own agenda in our schools. Sponsors and proponents of House Bill 485 claim that the bill is about instruction in human growth and development. In fact, it mandates the insertion of a single political agenda and worldview into our public school curriculum, a worldview many Americans do not subscribe to. The video recommended by the Baby Olivia Act is also full of medical inaccuracies and misleading talking points. The use of inaccurate and misleading content is part of a greater trend and arguably the organizational mission of Live Action, the creator of the Baby Olivia video. Live Action has been reviewed and confirmed by third parties to promote pseudoscience and, quote, whose sole mission is to discredit Planned Parenthood and to advocate for pro-life policies. While we do not oppose their right to express their viewpoint in the public arena, pseudoscience and misinformation do not have a place in education, least of all in mandated curriculum for elementary-age students. Although the sub-bill supposedly allows schools to use a substantially similar video, how would a school comply with that? What would the video still have to have medically inaccurate information in anti-abortion propaganda? What does it mean to be substantially similar? Ohio is the only state without health education standards, and this bill does nothing to remedy that failure. The bill does not require actual age-appropriate human growth and development curriculum that would give students the context for concepts related to pregnancy and fetal development. It is certainly not a substitute for comprehensive age-appropriate health education that equips students with the information they need to make healthy decisions across their lifespan. Any curriculum standard to be enforced in Ohio schools should also include a requirement that the information provided be factually accurate. House Bill 485 has no such requirement. A teacher or school could literally make anything up they wanted to, and it would be presented as fact to students with no context for them to discern if the information was being presented as fact was actual fact. We would never allow a math teacher to teach 2 + 2 = 6. We cannot allow factually inaccurate information in any of our school curriculum requirements. Ohio law also contains explicit allowances for parents who want to opt their children out of sex education, child abuse education, and several other subjects. We have heard over and over again from members of this body that parents must be in control of their own child's education. Why does this provision, the requirement to show a political propaganda video with demonstrated medical inaccuracies, not contain similar opportunity for parental opt-out? If this committee truly believes that parents should be in control of their child's education, that principle should be applied consistently and not changed based on the worldview of the video creator. A lot more, but I will try to come to a conclusion. Ohio already gives more than $20 million of funding to anti-abortion fake clinics. This bill is just another attempt to use state funds and resources to spread anti-abortion propaganda and misinformation. By mandate engagement with the Baby Olivia video, this committee would flood our schools with a level of misinformation that should not be tolerated at any level of education. Public schools are not a place to make religious assertions out to be fact, nor a battleground for the political ends of the adults who are supposed to protect our children's education decide to take up.
Thank you. Representative Newman for a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to the witness, thank you, Mrs. Miracle, for being here today and for your testimony. In your testimony, you said that the video contains factually, I think, or medically inaccurate details. Could you name one or more of those factually inaccurate details, and what evidence can you point to that shows it is factually inaccurate?
There are multiple sources. I can definitely send some citations to the chairperson's office. I would point to 2. Pregnancy by doctors is measured since the last menstrual period, or LMP. That's actually how you calculate weeks. This video does not use that pregnancy calculation that's used as a medical standard. It uses from conception, which isn't actually a knowable date in a pregnancy. It also talks about heartbeats. And fetal cardiac activity can start to be seen at a certain point in pregnancy, but that is not an actual created heart at that moment. It is an electrical signal fluttering through some cells. There is no actual heart that exists at that point in pregnancy either.
Ranking Member Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for coming in today. So, we've got several bills, this General Assembly, even last General Assembly, where the General Assembly itself is through the bills telling teachers and schools what to teach. And I've always said, I don't care if it's Republicans that are in control or Democrats that are in control. That's not the way we should be writing curriculum in the state of Ohio. The Department of Education, now the Department of Education Workforce, has a well-established vetting process for creating standards, learning standards in the state of Ohio that includes all stakeholders and experts through that process. Would you agree with regard to health and sex ed standards that that's probably a better way to go as opposed to standalone bills like this one?
Certainly, through the chair, to the ranking member, certainly. And I find it hilarious that one of the amendments that had to be made to this bill at the beginning was to take this out of health education, because Ohio has no health education standards. We are the only state in the entire country that doesn't create health education standards. And it's because this legislature is too scared to tell kids about their bodies and how their bodies work. And so, yes, we would strongly advocate for this legislature to take the shackles off of schools and of the Department of Health and allow them to create comprehensive, age-appropriate, factual health education that can be taught in our schools across the state.
Representative Pickle-Antonio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Miracle, for being here. One of the responses that you gave to a question was related to the dating of pregnancy, last menstrual period versus date of fertilization. And this bill uses date of fertilization. Some of the other laws that we have passed use last menstrual period. Do you have any thoughts about why there is a different dating method used depending on the type of law that we're talking about?
Through the chair to the representative, certainly. By using, so if you know about women's menstrual cycles, ovulation happens in the 2 weeks before a period actually begins, a menstrual cycle begins and bleeding begins. And so conception happens closer to that ovulation time frame. And so when we talk about last menstrual period, you're going backwards from that. And so by putting dating at the point of fertilization, you're actually changing the data to talk about how things are happening 2 weeks earlier than they're actually happening when you calculate pregnancy based on medical standards of last menstrual cycle.
Thank you. Representative Click.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Ms. Miracle, for being here. It really seems to me like you're just really afraid of young people having information. And throughout history, whenever we dehumanize a certain class of people, whether it's our African Americans or whether it's Jewish people, we always see death that follows, and we see inhumanity that follows. So why do you want to dehumanize babies in the womb?
Through the chair to the representative, when we talk about educating students and being scared of educating students, I would make the argument that this legislative body, by not creating health education standards and actually educating our students on what happens with their bodies as they grow and what happens as they get pregnant. I think one of the most interesting things that actually happened in this committee was that you were talking about the video and individuals were concerned about showing it to a third grader because they might not have had the conversation with their parents about where babies come from in the third grade. Where did baby Olivia come from? The video does not talk about how the pregnancy started and that the pregnancy actually exists in another human being's body that is also a living human being that needs to be taken care of in our society. As we erase the pregnant person in which the pregnancy actually exists, we are dehumanizing pregnant people.
Follow up.
So, first of all, only women can be pregnant, so there's no such thing as just pregnant people. But again, you didn't answer my question. Why do you want to dehumanize the baby inside the womb?
Through the chair to the representative, that is not what this is about. This is about making sure our students get factually accurate information. If you want to pass a bill that talks about how we should create a health education standard that includes factually accurate fetal development education so our students can learn about how somebody gets pregnant, how somebody doesn't get pregnant, what happens during pregnancy, both in fetal development and to the person that pregnancy is in's body. All of those things should be talked about because we should be humanizing all of those things, not just a single thing that the majority party of this legislature wants to focus on.
Thank you. I would just comment that the bill is focused on new laws, and we do currently have laws focused on sex education in Ohio. So those are in existing law.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Our current laws actually only allow for abstinence-only sex education in Ohio. That actually does not give students the full, accurate picture of how to prevent pregnancy, STIs, and how to live healthy lives.
Not to back and forth with you, because I respect that opinion, but it does actually include requirements for sexually transmitted infections and things that students are required to become aware of, along with dating violence. So we do have maybe more of a piecemeal approach, but all of them include the opportunity for parents to opt out as well, which this bill would allow.
Which does not allow, actually. This bill does not have an opt-out.
Again, I don't wish to go back and forth with you, but it does because it's going to be in the section of law that already allows that.
No, it is not.
Ranking Member Newman for a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to the witness, I appreciate your desire for factual accuracy. So in your opinion, is there a pregnancy or is there an embryo present at the date of the last menstrual cycle or at the date and time of conception? At which points is there actually an embryo present?
An embryo, sorry, through the chair to the representative, an embryo, if we're talking scientific factual accuracy, does not exist at either of those times. If it's a blastocyte at the moment of after conception. It does not become an embryo until later in the process.
Continue.
And so the blastocyte, which becomes an embryo, so I appreciate the correction of the terminology. And so could you explain why there are sometimes adjustments made in the physician's due date based on the difference between the last menstrual cycle versus closer timing to the conception? Why there might be an adjustment to the due date given by the doctor?
Through the chair, to the representative, doctors use last menstrual period or last menstrual cycle because it is a knowable date. The date of fertilization or conception is not knowable because we don't know the exact moment a sperm enters an egg and an egg is fertilized. So doctors use a knowable date to map pregnancy from that last menstrual cycle so that we know exactly where somebody is in a pregnancy.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we appreciate your time to come to committee today.
Thank you.